Perhaps ironically, or perhaps innately, it took someone like Donald Trump to speak some very harsh, unconventional truths to get this historical share of the Hispanic vote. I mean, I don't think it's an accident that you look at the 2020 election, for instance, there when Donald Trump now loses to Joe Biden. You have these heavily Hispanic counties, many of which stay with Trump in 2024. Places like Starr County, Texas, Zapata County, Texas, down there in the Rio Grande Valley. I mean, these are like 90+% Hispanic counties, and they're voting for Donald Trump. And guess what? Those are not the Cubans here in South Florida where I live. No, those are Mexicans.
Yeah.
And I mean, even here in Central Florida, outside Orlando, there is Ocala County. Ocala County is a formerly blue county that has broken red recently too. It's a very heavily Puerto Rican county, actually. So it's not even just the Venezuelans who are fleeing communism. No, I mean, there's been a real, genuine shift.
You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
And welcome. You are listening to and watching the Financial Survival Network. I'm your host, Kerry Lutz. Special guest on today. I've been watching him, Josh Hammer, you on YouTube. Lefties Losing It. It seems like for years it's been on now. I love watching that show in the morning. It gives me an early morning chuckle. Rita Penangi, the host of the show, is definitely great sense of humor and great political insights. And you're a regular guest there, Josh. And really, hey, if you can't laugh at yourself and you can't laugh at the left, what do we have left to laugh at?
You know, Kerry, it's great to join you, and thank you so much for the flattering words. It's funny. I go on a lot of shows with some degree of regularity, but it is Rita Panahi's Sky News Australia show that I probably get the single most in-person feedback on. Like, I have people at synagogue say, "Did I see you on Lefties Losing It on Sky News Australia?" And it's just really funny. I'm gonna Rita's show for years. It's actually a bit of a personal connection as well. One of Rita's good in-person friends in Melbourne, Australia, is actually a very old friend of my wife. It's kind of just a small world kind of thing there. But I get tremendous positive feedback from that show, and I'm always just very grateful for Sky News for having me on. I'm very grateful for you for having me on as well.
Yeah, it's interesting that you'd get your fame notoriety from an Australian show that totally works in the U.S. A lot of shows, that deal with politics don't work outside their local environs. Like, when you watch British political commentary, it doesn't work here in the U.S. But somehow she's made it work. That's really an accomplishment.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. The woman lives halfway around the world, and she has more incisive commentary and humorous, to your point, incisive and humorous commentary on our own politics than probably 95% or more of America's political commentators, left, center, right, combined there. So that's a real accomplishment there, and it's probably why she has tremendous views and ratings, I think.
Yeah. It was a shocker when I first found it. Like I said, a few years ago, I think I found it. But, so much of what happens in the world on these big tech platforms gets censored. It gets shifted to an agenda. We think we have free speech. I personally, on my YouTube channel, have been censored for 14 years now. Humor is the one way the one weapon available to you, to me, that really the left and most people don't know how to deal with.
Look, there are a lot of things we say about humor. I guess I will say this. I've long been on the opinion that it is also one of Donald Trump's greatest political gifts, actually. I believe that Donald Trump's two greatest and least transferable political gifts, the ones that you can't necessarily just teach to a novice, to an apprentice, to a young Padawan, if you will, those two gifts are, on the one hand, he has this inexplicable ability to make his political opponents lose their everlasting minds and to essentially bait them into taking the wrong end of an 80-20 or 90-10 issue. He does this over and over and over again. And really, he makes people just go crazy in a way that no other politician in my lifetime had done. So that's the first trait. The other trait is his humor. He's a very, very, very funny guy. In fact, I'll regale you with a very brief story. There's really two. These two clips from the first Trump era, Trump 1.0, if you will, that my brother and I have just probably gotten, more laughs from watching YouTube than I could possibly count. There's this one instance. I think it's like December 2015. It's in the primary. It's out in Iowa. I think it was there before the caucuses. It might have been South Carolina, but I think it was in Iowa. And then candidate Trump, I shouldn't be laughing at this as much as I am, but it's just so funny. He says from the front, he goes, "I've heard that there's some people out there who have brought tomatoes into the rally, and they want to throw tomatoes at me or people at the front. And I have this to say. I'm going to say, if you see someone about to hurl a tomato, knock the crack out of them. We'll cover the legal bills." And my brother and I we spent so many minutes, maybe even hours, just laughing at this clip on repeat. The second one is like he's given that annual Thanksgiving Day turkey pardon one year in like 2018, 2019. And the two turkeys are named Peas and Carrots. And like, it's just so funny. I mean, you want to like pee your pants. You're laughing so hard there. So yeah, humor is definitely not just deeply, deeply valuable. It was Aristotle back in the day, over 2 millennia ago. Aristotle famously said that the gods too are fond of a joke. So there's that. But it's also just a deeply political, beneficial skill if you can use it as effectively as Trump has over the years as well.
I remember Rush Limbaugh saying that if your political beliefs and your ideas cannot stand being ridiculed, then there's something seriously wrong with them, because, I'm paraphrasing him, because basically if it can't stand up to ridicule, then it can't work. And I can recount a personal event with myself, interaction with President Trump long ago when I was an attorney. I'm a recovering attorney myself. And this was in 2000. And, he saw my name in a publication in the Wall Street Journal, invited me and my partner to his office to discuss some cases. At the time, I vowed I would never wear another tie and a suit. And I'm wearing like a blazer and a cashmere sweater. My partner's a military nut. He's wearing battle fatigues, Desert Storm boots, and a Ranger cap into Trump's office. And Trump's like slouched back on the phone, and he sees us walk in, and he like looks us up and down like 4 or 5 times. Then he gets off the phone and he goes, "Are you sure you guys are lawyers? Because you don't look like any lawyers I ever saw." And I said to my partner, afterwards, I said, we're never going to get rich off of Trump. He's a legal connoisseur, but we are going to have stories for a lifetime. Never thinking that 16 years later, he was going to be going into the Oval Office. It was, and that humor is something that we lose sight of, I think, in the political debate. And Trump has effectively weaponized it, and it drives the left nuts. They don't even think he's funny, Josh. That's the depth of their vitriol and hatred of Trump. They can't even take a joke anymore.
Well, it's partially that. It's also partially the first of what I described as Donald Trump's 2 great political skills, which is his ability to inexplicably make his political opposition lose their everlasting mind. So it's a little bit of that too. Ironically, actually, it's the first of his 2 great traits that is actually, in this case, inhibiting their recognition of his second great trait, actually his humor. But this is one of the many reasons why, as we get closer to 2028, I mean, frankly, look, I mean, we're probably going to have candidates announced for 2028 within the next year at this point. It's getting pretty close. And it's one of the reasons why it's not clear to me that there is an obvious, clear successor to Donald Trump at this time. A lot of folks say J.D. Vance. Look, I've known J.D. on a personal level for many years. I was a big booster of his run for Senate and a booster as well of his vice presidential bid there. And there's a lot to say for that. There's also for Marco Rubio, who has been utterly exceptional, like really historically exceptional, frankly, in his current role, his dual role. Really maybe his multi-part role, but at least his dual role as Secretary of State and as National Security Advisor. But, whether it's J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, or really anyone else who might throw their hat into the ring in 2028, again, no one has that Trumpian humor. No one. And look, I live in Florida. I moved to Florida in 2021 for many reasons, one of which was Ron DeSantis' guidance of the state during the COVID-19 pandemic and generally just his policies and making Florida just really kind of along with Texas, one of the nation's most iconic, liberty-loving red states in general. But, DeSantis, I think he probably be the first to admit it, honestly. One of the reasons that his own presidential bid failed is that he just doesn't have that innate sense of humor, that innate ability just kind of immediately get the common guy at the diner in Iowa, for instance, to kind of like smile ear to ear. It's a very, 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 very rare thing. It's something that made Bill Clinton, certainly one of the youngest presidents ever elected. He had it very much as well. Not to say that he was funny, but he was charming. He was winsome. These are very, very difficult things to teach. You kind of have it or you don't. You can go to the old Lee Strasberg School of Acting in Manhattan. You can go to the Jimmy Carville School of how to get a political candidate on the campaign trail there. But very, very few people have these things there. And you know that you're experiencing a rare political talent when you have it. And Donald Trump is frankly one of those such talents.
Yeah, I think it's innate. I've done a little stand-up myself.
Oh, good for you.
And you have to be willing to bomb, and the thing about DeSantis, I like the guy. Yeah, like every state's corrupt. So I've already come to that conclusion. So I'm not letting that stand in my way. But competence level is like, I know when there's a disaster in the state of Florida and there's always a disaster hurricane time, that guy is going to be there and he's going to be getting people to fix stuff and make the trains run on time again. And that is a rare talent that is so underappreciated in DeSantis, and it's just never going to take him across the finish line.
It's done wonders here in Florida. I mean, he's been an extraordinarily impressive governor in virtually every way that you can judge a gubernatorial tenure. He's also essentially single-handedly transformed Florida from being the nation's quintessential iconic purple state, the nation that famously decided the 2000 presidential election by barely over 500 votes, the hanging chads, the this, the that there. And now Florida is a true, veritable red state bastion. So he's done incredible work. He's left an incredible legacy. But clearly his run at the national level flopped. And will he give it another shot at the apple? I don't know. He's a very young guy still. I mean, he's basically in his mid-40s now. His children, I think, are still under the age of 10, three of them. So he's a young guy. He definitely has time there, but some of these things you kind of just have or you don't. And Ron, for all of his tremendous gifts, and look, I've met Ron DeSantis in person many, many times. I've seen him off camera. He absolutely can be, a little more kind of casual conversation, drink a beer, smoke a cigar, that kind of thing there. Maybe not quite like Trump then, but he does have it there. But being able to kind of take that and to really kind of do the old kind of Tocquevillian American democracy process, going from gas station to gas station, Iowa, shaking hands, making people feel like they're $1 million, right? Making the everyday person feel like he or she is $1 million. Because politics, in many ways, ultimately is a sales package endeavor as well. You're selling yourself essentially as a candidate, not in a prostitution way, although frankly some politicians do that too. But you're selling yourself as a prospective elected official, and you have to really kind of leave a very positive, lasting impression there. So yes, we'll see if Ron gives another shot. I suspect in 2028 he probably won't, for the very simple reason that I expect Marco Rubio probably will, and I'm not sure that there's room for both of them there, but I've been wrong before, so I guess let's see.
Yeah, Marco Rubio, to me, is the shocker of the whole Trump administration. Like, I thought he was a bright guy, thought he had a sense of humor, although he got out-Trumped by Trump on the stage numerous times, and yet the guy, he's basically the president of Venezuela now. He'll soon be the president of Cuba, as well as being Secretary of State. I mean, that guy, he's way, way outperformed anything that I expected.
He's been extraordinary. I mean, look at what the administration has accomplished on the world stage at this point. I mean, you had the setting back by years, at least potentially a decade or more, of the Iranian nuclear program. You had peace deals between India and Pakistan. People forgot that there was a real worry that these two nuclear countries might actually engage in direct fisticuffs. He got a peace deal between India and Pakistan. He got a peace deal between Cambodia and Thailand, two rivals there in Southeast Asia. He got this incredible peace deal that's being deeply unheralded, no one's really talking about it, between Armenia and Azerbaijan, two countries that hated each other. Oh. I know because I was there. I was in Armenia, 2.5 years ago now. went to the border. I saw it firsthand. Deep, deep vitriol between these two countries there, multiple wars over the past
Rival.
3.5, 4 decades. And not only did they get a peace deal, there's this incredible press conference that no one covered at the White House back in like early to mid-August. And the two leaders are like clanking a champagne glass. It's incredible stuff. I mean, the level of look, they haven't gotten the Russia-Ukraine deal. It's not for lack of trying. They've been trying really, really hard. Sometimes it's just really hard. I mean, Vladimir Putin's a tough cookie. So sometimes it's just really, really, really hard to get a deal. But they've accomplished so much there. The Maduro operation, a staggering success, a mind-blowing success, reminder of American resilience and American exceptionalism, especially in our own hemisphere. And yeah, Rubio is behind not all of this, but a lot of it. He really has been kind of like the guy behind a lot of the administration's staggering diplomatic and foreign policy successes there. So right now, he's being very coy. When he's asked about 2028, he basically says, I'm not thinking about that, or if the vice president runs, I'll support him there. If you ask me, my own opinion, what I think Marco Rubio is doing, I think he's basically playing something of a stalking horse game right now. He thinks probably it's a little bit too early to peak at this time there. He wants to kind of let the administration play out there, keep on padding his resume there. And at this point, again, I've been wrong before, but I would be pretty surprised if this momentum keeps up. I'd be pretty surprised if he does not mount a bid in 2028.
Yeah, he's been remarkable. I mean, the foreign policy successes, Rwanda, and
yeah, right.
There's been so many of them. And, I was in Thailand when they resumed their hostilities again. But, he stopped that. And the whole thing with Russia-Ukraine war, I mean, the military-industrial complex doesn't want it to end. And until they've gotten their profits, I don't think it's going to. It's a whole new generation of hardware they're going to be able to sell, or that they're selling now. So there's just too much against them to stop it. But I think we're getting closer. The recent prisoner exchange, maybe that's an indication that they're going to come to their senses, because it's just like chewing up men and capital with no benefit to either side now.
Look, I hope you're right. I pray that you're right. It's been absolute carnage. So much attention goes to our Middle East conflicts for various reasons that people just forget about the level of depravity and carnage that has happened there in Ukraine and also inside Russia as well, both places over the past 4 years. You're talking here about a death toll in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands. I mean, whatever the death toll was in Gaza over that war, and it's certainly not what Hamas says it was, but we can debate exactly what it was there. It pales in comparison, a fraction of the death toll in Russia, Ukraine. Even if the war were to actually end tomorrow, it would take Ukraine decades, a half century at least, probably to rebuild. Thinking about the loss of young men and women, people who are scarred, PTSD, people who have fled the country, the level of intellectual capital, financial capital, social capital, all of it, which has left the country to try to seek asylum and refuge elsewhere. It's been an astounding, shockingly high cost. And unfortunately, both parties, I primarily blame Putin, but Zelensky definitely has at times been too stubborn as well. And it's just been a very, 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 very difficult deal. And certainly to your point, the military-industrial complex, that's a very astute point. It's one that's not really made very frequently, but they definitely don't have a particularly firm interest in ending this one, shall we say. I guess you're probably right and spot on about that.
And they don't care who wins or loses. They don't care if the stuff gets blown up the moment it gets off the ship, because they're getting paid. At least Trump has shifted the financial burden to Europe rather than the U.S. taxpayer. So be grateful for that. One thing I want to cover with you, I don't think it's covered enough: fraud. All right. You're not surprised by the fraud that's being uncovered. I'm certainly not. I've been dealing with the government my whole adult life. There's more than enough fraud to go around. But the whole basis of the Great Society by Johnson, it's fraudulent on its face, right? I mean, it really was built to encourage fraud and to encourage the worst aspects of humanity.
Well, it was certainly built to enable and abet fraud at minimum. But I think above all, really, it was built towards the goal of subservience, of trying to make more men dependent on the teat of the government, to make them subservient to Uncle Sam ultimately. I've heard various skeptics, critics of the welfare state. I mean, Thomas Sowell comes to mind. Thomas Sowell has frequently said that the welfare state was one of the worst things that ever happened to the black family. For instance, I mean, think about when Daniel Patrick Moynihan famously decried the rate of out of wedlock parenting at the time of a child's birth in black families. That happened in the late 60s, early 70s. Well, that number has gone way, way higher ever since then. There, certainly, I think our welfare state bears at least part of the blame there. But ultimately, look, I'm an observant Jew, but I believe very, very firmly in America's Protestant historical tradition. And I take a thicker kind of cultural conception of Protestantism in America. And I'm getting here at notions like individuality, rebelliousness to an extent, and really kind of this notion of the Protestant work ethic that has really been bread and butter part of America since the founding. Whether you're Protestant or Catholic, Jewish, whatever, if you come to America, you have assimilated into that framework. And that really is what's made us great for a very, very, very long time. The welfare state, as began with Woodrow Wilson, FDR, really exploded in the 1960s with LBJ. And then Obama expanded as well, of course. The modern welfare state is a massive rebuke. It is two middle fingers straight into the face of that historical Protestant work ethic. And that's one of the many, many reasons why it is insidious and ultimately destructive to our American experiment.
Yeah, well, I was a friend of mine. I was out with dinner, and we're definitely at different ends of the political spectrum. I mean, I'm more libertarian than conservative, but certainly a lot of my values align with the right. Not in the way it's practiced necessarily, but in the theoretical backing. And, they're like complaining about something in Minneapolis, whatever. I don't remember what it was about. And I said, do you really think we need more Somalis in the country? I said 80% of them are on welfare, receiving some type of public benefit. And then the other 20, maybe they're all fraudsters. I don't know the answer, but I do know, and it's nothing to do with Somalis. It's a system that encourages fraud, embraces it, doesn't hold fraudsters accountable, doesn't put them in jail. And I'm just looking at it, and there's no surprises here at all. It's the natural outcome.
No, there's no surprises at all from the ability, frankly, possibly the innate, inbuilt nature of the welfare state to lend itself to fraud. But there's also something that is culturally innate in certain communities that lend themselves to fraud or taking advantage of others as well. I've seen the same stats that you have about the Somali community in Minnesota. Congressman Brandon Gill of Texas, who I recently had him as a guest on my show, personal friend in real life. He's doing amazing work there on this issue, among others. He went viral on social media for this hearing where he was grilling people about the rates of things like welfare and fraud in that community there. That doesn't happen accidentally. There is something fundamentally incompatible with that particular culture at this time, at least. I mean, again, maybe it'll change, but right now, there's something fundamentally incompatible with Somali values, let's call them, with the values of, I guess in this case, the welfare state. And it kind of reminds me of the old Milton Friedman line about open borders and a welfare state. How you simply can't have both. I mean, you can't have mass uncontrolled immigration, frankly, even just mass, completely unvetted illegal immigration, right? Mass immigration without any kind of eye towards assimilation, eye towards preserving some sense of unity and decency and culture and so forth. That you can't have any of that with a massive welfare state. And unfortunately, that's the way it's been here in America for decades at this point.
Yeah, it really has. The interesting thing is the shift in the Hispanic population. Conservatives always said once they buy into the American dream and the American system that they're going to get more conservative. And then there's many different subcultures of the Hispanic vote, but that is actually coming to pass. So that was one prophecy that really did come true.
Yes, and I will note that it didn't come true because of the pablum that was given by Republican K Street consultants back during the Bush administration. Back then, this notion was ubiquitous that if you just give amnesty and you try to legalize as many illegal lands as possible, this notion of a pathway to citizenship. This was Bush's second-term failed effort to get so-called comprehensive immigration reform. This is part of the problem with Rubio 1.0, the infamous kind of Gang of Eight debacle back in 2013. Obviously, Marcos has changed his tune a little bit since then. But, I mean, suffice to say that those efforts were not rewarded with larger shares of the Hispanic vote. Perhaps ironically, or perhaps innately, it took someone like Donald Trump to speak some very harsh, unconventional truths to get this historical share of the Hispanic vote. I mean, I don't think it's an accident that you look at the 2020 election, for instance, there, when Donald Trump now loses to Joe Biden. You have these heavily Hispanic counties, many of which stay with Trump in 2024. Places like Starr County, Texas, Zapata County, Texas, down there in the Rio Grande Valley. I mean, these are like 90+% Hispanic counties, and they're voting for Donald Trump. And guess what? Those are not the Cubans here in South Florida where I live. No, those are Mexicans.
Yeah.
And I mean, even here in Central Florida, outside Orlando, there is Ocala County. Ocala County is a formerly blue county that has broken red recently too. It's a very heavily Puerto Rican county, actually. So it's not even just the Venezuelans who are fleeing communism. No, I mean, there's been a real, genuine shift there. Now, I've heard some recent chatter from some Republican consultant types that they say that because of the ICE raids or that Republicans are risk throwing away all of their wins when it comes to Hispanic voters. They better compromise. They better do XYZ thing. I'm open to having a conversation personally, but I am very skeptical of these sorts of claims because they were just demonstrably wrong for a very, very, very long time. There's very little, if any, empirical evidence that Hispanic voters reward squishiness on illegal immigration with votes. If anything, they seem to prefer the exact opposite of that. So I'm very skeptical, but I definitely have heard that conversation start to pop up.
Yeah, interesting, but that's the shifts that take place over time in the country. At one time, California was red, New York was red in the late 50s, early 60s, and basically they lost their way, and, the trends occur. So, hey, as far as where we're heading in the country, the insurrection that's taking place, at what point does that just have to be stopped by whatever means necessary?
Look, lawlessness has to be put down. Respect for the rule of law is ultimately what separates civilization from barbarism. I mean, it pretty much ultimately is really that simple. You're a former lawyer. I'm also a former/current lawyer. I'm still senior counsel at the Article 3 project, still barred actually in Texas, although I live in Florida. The rule of law really is one of the ultimate differentiating factors and one of the things that has always made America a first world country. But what we've seen in places like Minnesota over the past month-ish, I mean, ever since DHS went in there following the explosion of the Somali fraud story, the Nick Shirley videos there, all that was what precipitated this Twin Cities immigration enforcement operation. What we've seen has been, it says in the book of Ecclesiastes in the Kohelet that there's nothing new under the sun, right? And we've seen some of these very old, discredited talking points and arguments be made new again. So I almost leapt out of my seat in agony when I was watching the Attorney General there, Keith Ellison, when he read off his state's complaint against DHS. They filed a formal complaint at the time, it was about a little under a month ago, against Kristi Noem, against all the folks there in DHS, Border Patrol, Greg Bavino. And he's there and he's saying the 10th Amendment and states' rights means that the federal government cannot belong here. And I'm sitting there thinking, if you were to say this in like a thick Southern accent, the 10th Amendment and states' rights, the federal government does not belong here in Minnesota. I mean, that's John C. Calhoun in the 1840s. That's the whole nullification crisis. That did not end well. That's literally Orville Faubus standing outside the high school, Little Rock Central High School in Arkansas, forcing Dwight D. Eisenhower to send in the 101st Airborne to desegregate Little Rock. I mean, this argument has been discredited time and time again throughout American history there. So, look, it seems to me at this point that things are going better. Minnesota, it's certainly less in the news. It seems like there's less in the way of catastrophic standoffs. Tom Homan, who I trust implicitly, seems to be quite satisfied at the level of Minnesota statewide and municipal compliance with the feds. I'm a little skeptical, but if Tom Homan is satisfied, then I'm satisfied because I really have no reason, frankly, to doubt or question his discernment and judgment here. But if it were to escalate and pick up again there, then I will reiterate what I've been saying for a while now, which is that we have a statute on the books literally exactly for this. It's called the Insurrection Act. It was passed during the Thomas Jefferson presidency, 1807. It was last invoked during the Rodney King riots out in Los Angeles during the George H.W. Bush administration. It's also, by the way, what Abraham Lincoln invoked after the shots were fired in Fort Sumter in April 1861. When you have insurrectionary behavior, when you have this notion that the federal law is not going to be respected or enforced, this is the proper remedy there. And again, apparently we've had a bit of an easing of tension, something of a détente, I guess you would say, between Minnesota and the feds. But if that situation were to change, then there's a statute, Mr. President, to invoke.
And, the federal takeover of D.C., which clearly, the federal government has the right to, is the district. I was in D.C. like 3-4 months ago, and the change there was profound. For one thing, Trump, the master builder, is fixing every government building in D.C. that was run down or looked bad. I mean, the massive amount of construction going on there, restoring these buildings, the Supreme Court, so many other buildings. A lot of it he planned his first term. It kind of started during Biden, and now it's really taken off. But the safety factor was definitely palpable. And, yet people say, well, you can't send in the troops, if they don't want them. And yet, people are being saved here. People, crime is down, murders are down. I don't see how the left can oppose a policy that is good for lower income people, good for everybody, the sense of safety, like what's happened in New Orleans. Same thing. And even though they won't admit it, it's the same thing that's happened in Minneapolis. You get rid of the hardcore recidivists, especially the ones that are illegal aliens. You deport them, and miracle of all miracle, crime goes down. And yet the left cannot accept this, Josh. I mean, this is where I just scratch my head and say, well, we're in different belief systems here. There's no way that they can be reached.
Well, look, the president does have some unique powers about Washington, D.C., as you say. It's the federal district, and the federal government has more direct control. But there are ways to get involved in other jurisdictions as well. So this notion of cooperation, it goes through the state. It goes to the governor's office, not to the city. That's why, for instance, to use my example of Eisenhower and Orville Faubus, that's why it was the governor and not the mayor of Little Rock who was standing athwart that high school there, because this notion of cooperation between the National Guard and the states, it's only up to the states. Why do I say that? Well, because if you have a blue city and a red state, you mentioned New Orleans as a very good example. Yeah. New Orleans, St. Louis, Missouri, how about Memphis, Tennessee? I mean, places like this. I mean, frankly, even Austin, Texas. A lot of these blue cities and red states are totally ripe, or absolutely ripe for having President Trump send in the National Guard with the cooperation of the governor there, and just to reap the results of this. Look, Washington, D.C., I think I saw this statistic. They just had, I could be wrong, I think I read they had one reported homicide, one, for the entire month of January. I could be misremembering there, but I'm pretty sure I heard that. Again, maybe there were more, but there's only one formally reported one, which is the lowest number in decades. Absolutely in decades. I mean, that is staggering stuff. By the way, the total number of homicides in America in the year 2025 dropped to the lowest number since the McKinley administration, since the year 1900, just around the time McKinley was assassinated and Teddy Roosevelt stepped in as the youngest president at the time. I mean, this is historical stuff. Look, when it comes to crime, when it comes to border security, physical security, these are really the things that ultimately do win over voters. It's very similar to those Hispanic voters there in the Rio Grande Valley of Texas. I think that the Hispanic voters want the Sinaloa cartel or the other cartels to run roughshod over that border. Are you kidding me? I mean, they don't want that anything more than the blue-collar, middle-class worker in Northeast D.C. wants gang violence and shots ringing out there on a random Tuesday or Wednesday night. I mean, no one wants this there. The solution is law and order. The solution is reducing crime, enforcing our laws, enforcing border security, getting people's physical security and their needs and wants and desires up to a better place there. And ultimately, that's how you pick up voters in this country, I think.
And, the left will deny the efficacy of Trump's measures. That's a guaranteed, because I know, like, I was in New York when Giuliani became mayor, and the turnabout was so dramatic. The reduction in crime, the perception of safety in public spaces, and a general decline in antisocial behavior among certain groups. And yet now, when you go back, they won't admit Giuliani's accomplishments. They say it was demographically driven, all sorts of ridiculous things. So unfortunately, we can't expect Trump to get the respect and the credit that he deserves, but hopefully history will write it. Josh, we want to find out more about you, read your latest articles. Where is the best place to find you?
Yeah, I really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. So I write a weekly syndicated column that goes up at a lot of places, such as Newsweek, the LA Times, Real Clear Politics, Daily Signal, and elsewhere. I'm also a Shillman Fellow at the David Horowitz Freedom Center, so follow my stuff also at their website. Front Page Magazine. I'm senior counsel for the Article 3 Project, article3project.org. Follow me on X, Josh_Hammer. Then my book also, last year, Israel and Civilization, The Fate of the Jewish Nation and Destiny of the West. And also, a final plug, I guess, my daily show, The Josh Hammer Show, available everywhere podcasts are available. It's also available on digital streaming via the Salem News Channel, where it appears every night at 10 p.m.
Excellent. We'll put a link in the show notes to this interview on financialsurvivalnetwork.com so people know where to find you. Appreciate you coming on. It's really been a pleasure, and hopefully we'll have you on again soon.
Look forward to it. Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.